Wow, difficult one to get motivated this morning. Tired after a long day yesterday, and it's raining, it's windy, it's generally really unpleasant out there. But you don't learn much about yourself in good conditions. So stiff talking to myself in the boot room this morning, trainers are on, we're gonna get this done regardless. Wow, it's always the same, always the same. Never regret getting out there, getting it done. Not once do you regret getting out there, getting it done. And it's never as bad as you think it's gonna be. Looking back to 45 minutes ago, trying to put my shoes on to get outside, motivation's pretty rocky. Am I cold? Yeah. Am I wet? Yeah, very wet. Am I pumped and inspired? Hell yeah! Always worth it. It is always worth sticking your nose in it, rubbing your face in it, getting out there and getting it done. Well, that was a hard one to motivate this morning, but well worth being out this blustery morning. Check the hair! Gosh, I need a haircut. There he is, look. He's sloping off, trying to hide. I can see you. But what a wonderful morning. I don't know if you can see over there. All the corn is like shimmering in the wind. Oh, absolutely glorious to be out this morning. Well, it's 8k done. Felt a bit guilty for not supporting Guy this morning, but I got to head back. Bit of a workout with the family, and then brunch. Love a bit of brunch on a Sunday. So hit me up, tell me what you're doing this weekend. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't listened to it yet, check out Alex on Cool Conversations from last Thursday. I think it's the best one yet. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Catch you soon. Oh, that was a fab run this morning. Oh, there he is, look. Just see him, he's hiding. Really great run, but one that's a bit tinged with sadness. Today I'm supposed to be flying to Pakistan, and great expedition. And though I know that the mountains never go anywhere, I'm just not sure if the opportunity is going to come round again with the same team. The team was definitely going to make this trip something special. And that really made me reflect on my run, about the importance of seizing opportunity as and when it arrives, especially if that opportunity resonates with you or you see possibilities or positivity in it. Because we never know if it's going to come around again. And once it's gone, more often than not, it's gone forever. So we've got to grab it while it's there. So yeah, a little bit sad today, but I'm not going to let it get me down. It's the weekend coming up. We are in this together. We will get this done together. Wow, who saw Cool Conversations just now? I'm so pumped over that one. That's probably, I think, the best one we've done. What a guy Alex is. So humble, yet so full of insight. Anybody that thinks that he can be pulled across the finish line in the Constellix 4s being spare baggage, come on Alex. Whoa, I'm just blown away, I'm speechless. If you missed it, I'm going to put the link down here because you've got to listen to this one. It's the best Cool Conversation thus far. Alex, I owe you one. You are a legend. Oh, that's gotta be a hell yeah Monday! Oh, I love that run. Felt amazing, it felt like I pushed it quite hard. Which is really unusual because yesterday it felt rubbish. And then I did a workout, but that was awesome. I think that's the power of sleep. Let's not underestimate the power of good sleep. And for the first time in a long time, I had a good sleep last night. still feeling a bit sad. I'm going to be trekking my way towards K2 base camp this week. Obviously that's not going to happen, but I'm not letting it get me down. Start of another week. No idea what this week has in store, but I know it's going to be good because I'm going to make it good. And that's the key thing. And together we can make this good. Let's get it done. Wow, it's Thursday. Welcome back to Cool Conversations. What a week it's been. Now, the guest lined up this week is going to blow your mind. Honestly, the guy has been there, done it, ridden it, driven it, jumped off it, probably skied down it, double backflipped off of it. Incredible. We'll get to him in just one moment. But before that, we've got a competition. The first time we're running a competition, and it's with our friends at FatMap, that awesome online 3D mapping app. If you haven't got it, go check it out. At the end of this show will be all the details how you can enter the competition to win a year's subscription to their Explore bundle. But before that, we have the ultimate adventure, adrenaline, junkie. The guy is off the charts. He's ridden rodeo bulls. He's driven NASCARs in competition. He's climbed Everest 3 times. He's got speed records on Choya and Everest. He's got a new route to his name on Makalu. And then he segued somehow into base jumping, wingsuit flying, the first guy to fly all the way around the Matterhorn. And then he's taken all that skill, to the Himalayas. And some of the jumps he's done in the Himalayas are off the charts. Added to that, he lives on a Californian beach. He looks like a film star. He is none other than the adventurist himself, Joby Ogwyn. Joby, how you doing, fella?
Oh man, I'm doing great here. That was quite the introduction. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
And how is Laguna Beach?
Very kind.
Because you do live on the beach, don't you?
I do live on the beach. You know, I have to say, when I was a little kid, I was born in California, and then I grew up in Louisiana. You know that, in the flatlands of the South there. And then about 18 years ago, I moved to California. And my dream was always to have a house on the top of a hill overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And about 7 years ago, I got that. And I can tell you that every morning when I come down to my living room and I see the ocean like that, it is a very satisfying feeling knowing that what I had to do to get it and how great it is to be here. So I've been blessed and very lucky. But you, my friend, have yet to come and visit me.
Every time I try to contact you when I come across the States, you're always base jumping or wingsuit flying in Switzerland. I see more of you. I see more of you in places like the bar in the Yak and Yeti, Everest Base Camp, or remember the time we hooked up in Lauterbrunnen, completely in that beautiful valley by the Eiger. You were jumping and I came for supper that time. I don't think I've ever seen you in the US.
No, actually you haven't. You've missed me every time. I'm sorry about that, but we'll have our time here. You have to bring your family here to my house and stay here a little bit because it's a really magic place. But I always enjoy the fact that you and I have actually spent the time in places like Everest Base Camp and Lauterbrunnen and places like that. We've
they're pretty cool spots.
Most interesting conversations.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I first met you in 2000 and would it be 5 or I forget when you were on Everest, 5 or 6 maybe, and you were this weird enigma that never came out of his tent. You just appeared at meal times and totally did your own thing on the mountain, like this sort of black assassin that would just sort of disappear in the night. And someone would say, "Where's Joby?" And you'd gone. But you spent all your time in the tent, in the raging heat. And I mean, what were you doing in there?
I guess you could say I was meditating or visualizing the climb as it was coming up. No, I was probably reading a book or listening to music, man. Just biding my time. Like
because when people mention Joby, that's what I think of. You had that little orange tent, and you had a heap of tech in there because you've always been quite tech savvy, and we'll come back to that later. You had a heap of tech in there, and it was like an inferno. For those who don't know, at Everest Base Camp, when the sun comes out, it gets pretty damn hot, doesn't it?
It does. People always, I think, imagine Everest or the Himalayas or the mountains like you and I climb all the time as being places that are just cold all the time. They think we're in those big down suits 24/7, and it really is the opposite. In fact, somebody asked me the other day, Kenton, said, what do you think, it was a movie producer guy, he said, do you think you have an advantage, like you climb really fast, you did some things in the Himalayas, do you think you have an advantage because you have like a big VO2 max or your lungs or something? I said, no, I grew up in the South in a really, really hot place that gave me advantage because everybody thinks it's cold up there, and some of the hard days are actually bloody hot, man. And so for that reason, I thought maybe I had a little advantage in that way.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So you mentioned you grew up in the South. So you've already mentioned you were born in California, moved to Louisiana, and it's pretty flat there, isn't it? And from what I can gather, your parents weren't massively, they weren't climbers or they didn't have that adventure gene in them. Where did the inspiration, because from a very young age, I read somewhere from quite a young age, you set yourself a target of climbing Everest, and you systematically went out and did that. Where did that inspiration, where did that ambition germinate from?
That's a great question. I coming from a place that's that flat, where my parents, everybody always assumed, I've had this a million times. They say, "Oh, you must be from, your family must have taken these big trips to the mountains." I said, "No,
I'm the same.
We're underwater."
Time. Yeah, I get it as well. I grew up in London. There's no mountains in London.
Right? You understand exactly. Yeah. And so you go, well, where does that inspiration come from? For me, actually, Kenton, it was I had the travel bug. I wanted to travel. And I, at the time, probably wanted to be a photographer when I was younger, in my early teens. And then after a little while, I started traveling and I realized I'm not a very good photographer. So there's that. But I still felt like that I could find a way to make a living out of being in the wilderness, the mountains, and the outdoors. And that's really what gave me my ideas. When I was a little kid, my mother, I remember, took me to a museum in Chicago. And in the museum, they had an IMAX theater. And in that theater, they were playing a movie about Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And when I came out of that theater, I remember telling my mom, I said, "Man, I'm going to go there one day. I'm going to go to Antarctica." And she said, "Honey, only scientists and stuff get to do that." I said, "Well, then I'll have to be a scientist or help the scientists somehow, to do it." You're right. I always had this idea of travel and adventure. And I guess it just really came from inside of me. I had really to motivate myself to go and find a way to make those things happen at a very young age. To get to Everest when I was 24, that took some ingenuity. I had to really find the resources and work with a lot of people to do it. And like you said, at the end, I was up there all by myself. It was kind of funny. The oxygen didn't really work. It's kind of a bad deal. We didn't have any real fixed ropes or anything. There was, it was me and Willie Benegas, I think, on the top, and a couple Sherpa guys who followed us up there from another expedition. It was great. We had it all to ourselves. I miss those days and that kind of adventure. But that was a younger man's game at the time too. I was much younger. I'm 46 now, turning 46 in August.
You can't use that one. I'm a year older than you, Joby. You can't.
I know.
You can't use the age card here, young man. Oh no. But it is worth pointing out that you first climbed Everest in '99.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was a very, obviously the mountain's the same, but the infrastructure around Everest back in the late 90s compared with now, the poles apart. You almost could have been climbing a different mountain. And then 2 years later, or 3 years later, you found yourself on K2. You went to K2, did you not, with our mutual friend Henry?
Yes.
And as often happens on K2 was a shutdown year that year. And no summit on K2, but obviously the enthusiasm wasn't dampened at all.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that expedition because it was one of my very favorite expeditions. We only got about halfway up the mountain, and it snowed, and we were there for 72 days, and we had avalanches coming down, and it was a rough season. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was maybe the second or maybe even the third season in a row that nobody had summited at that time. And like you said, back in those days, the way that the infrastructure is laid out and the technology and things work, it was vastly different. But what I remember about that expedition was we had about a dozen people and everybody was super cool. And I never laughed on an expedition as much as I did that one. And we didn't climb jack.
Yeah, that's because you've never really been on an expedition with me yet.
I know.
It's not because we laugh together.
More tent time with Kenton.
Yeah, but people normally laugh at me, not with me. That's the difference. But it's interesting how you say that the people were all really cool. And I do wonder sometimes, going back, say, 20 odd years, you really had to climb the mountains. You know, the infrastructure wasn't there. We didn't have the big Sherpa support on Everest that we have now. The oxygen delivery system was perhaps a little bit flaky, and we come to your own experience on that in a minute. So you went to the mountains with, I think, a somewhat different philosophy to the way that a lot of people go to the mountains now. And I think that's one of the reasons why maybe those teams back in the day were, yeah, but I remember them myself. They were perhaps more fulfilling back then, even though half the time we wouldn't see the summits, let alone get up them.
True.
For lots of reasons. I mean, we didn't have weather forecasting, for instance. We didn't have the Sherpa infrastructure. The fixed line was that rubbish Korean polypro that you wouldn't hang your car off, let alone your life off. But it was character building at the same time.
Yes.
That's what I loved about it. Now, I'm fascinated by how you became pretty much neighbors with Simone Morrow. So there you are. You're this already superstar young American. I wouldn't say kid anymore. You're now early 20s. And how did the move to Italy come about? I perhaps should set the scene. So Simone Morrow still today is considered one of the very best alpinists that's ever lived. And you two became really tight, didn't you? And you moved to Bergamo in Italy. What prompted, I mean, a boy growing up in Louisiana, next thing you know, you're in North Italy and one of the most cultured places in the world. How does that work?
I was definitely a fish out of water. I don't know how I got there. No, you know, that's an interesting story. Quickly, though, I was traveling, and I was basically in between expeditions. I know you can relate to this, Kenton, where you do an expedition in the springtime in the Himalayas and you do an expedition in the fall, of course. And in between, you have to find something to do. There's the monsoon. Well, I had a summer where I had, you know, I was so poor I couldn't afford to fly back to the United States, basically. But I could get a cheap ticket to Bergamo. I think I took the train the last miles there, whatever. I had quite nothing. And I was good friends with Simone because I had met him in 2001 where he saved this British guy on Lhotse.
Oh, on Lhotse.
And I made friends.
That was quite a famous rescue on Lhotse, which Simone kind of made his name on the back of that.
He really did, and to back that story up, I was there with Iñaki at the time, and we watched him rescue this kid, who really, he was a decent, strong enough guy, young kid, but he really didn't know what he was doing on a more technical peak like Lhotse, and he got himself in a pretty good bind. And I didn't really know Simone at the time, but I was standing at Camp 2, and the sun was coming down, and you could just kind of see the shadows of these guys moving on the face. And Dennis and Simone had gone and rescued this kid and the Polish woman, Anna. And I remember standing there with Iñaki, and we saw Simone go kind of over the turtle. And then he was there at this place where this kid fell. And he was he lost a crampon. He was just kind of there, going to die for sure. And I see Simone moving back across and up the turtle. And I said, oh, he had to leave him. And Iñaki kind of punched me in the side. He goes, no, dude. He goes, he's carrying him. And he was. Wow. And that was quite something to see. And when Simone came down, I made friends with him just by default. And he said, hey, you should come, see me in Italy. And I said, well, you should come see me in California. I lived in Santa Barbara at the time. Well, him and his wife, about a few months later, came and saw me in Santa Barbara. And they stayed there for about a week, and we had a great time. And I remember because Simone and I would go and train, and he said, you need to be training a lot harder. I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Well, he's an animal.
He's an animal. And so, but I believed him. I couldn't keep up with him. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. So I went to see him in between expeditions, to answer your question. And I was there in Bergamo, which is a beautiful, beautiful place, a great place to train. And somehow it came up that the apartment above him was free. And I said, I'll take it.
Wow.
And so that's really how it worked out. And it was great because we did some really cool expeditions. I learned how to be, in a lot of ways, a professional mountaineer, professional athlete. based on what Simone had already accomplished. He was quite a bit older than me. He had already done quite a lot. He understood what it took to acquire sponsorship, to do TV and film things. And what I realized very quickly was that I could learn a lot from this guy. I learned how to train to the point where I could outrun him, and
Wow.
on good days, and he gave me a little credit. He said, all right, now you're training hard. He said, run to the next village, have a pizza and a glass of wine, and run back. I said, where's the next village? He goes, 12 miles away over the mountain. I did that once a week until I got where I could keep up with him, basically. But he's a world-class person and a world-class guy. A lot of people think a lot of things about him, but I spent a lot of time with him, and he was very kind and generous to me in his knowledge, in his generosity of introducing me to a lot of certain people. I had dinner with Walter Bonatti and
Wow.
Achille Campagnoni, before those guys were a little more out of the way. With Simone, I had dinner with Reinhold Messner at his castle, and things like that, so I was very happy, or, invited to things at least, and met some of these guys in ways that I had never, would have imagined, heroes of mine in that way. So Simone was always very kind and generous to invite me to things like that, and showed me how to be a professional. And so that was cool. It's like playing basketball with Michael Jordan in some ways. He was just a little bit further advanced than kind of all our group. He was just a little ahead of things.
I think, to be honest, to give Simone credit, I think he was ahead of a lot of people at that time, and to a certain extent still is. I mean, he's still carving out a name for himself on the big peaks. He still rock climbs super hard. I remember one of the first times I ever met him, I was having a cup of coffee with him, and he kind of looked at me in the way that he can and said, I can tell you're a real climber. And this is when Everest started to evolve into what it is today. And like, well, how can you tell? He goes, I can tell from your fingers and your forearms. And that was it. He kind of had it dialed. And I'm super fond of Simone. I know a lot of people, he's a bit Marmite, black and white. Some people like him, some people don't. I think he's a megastar. I like him a lot. I
learned a lot from him.
You climbed
good and bad. You learn from people,
Yeah, you climbed Batura too with him, did you not?
Yeah.
Or we went to.
Yeah, we did 3 peaks in that area actually. That was some of the finest climbing I ever did.
Yeah, at the time,
I still got rescued by the Pakistani military at the end after the avalanche. Broke my ankle, but that was quite an adventure, I have to say.
Yeah, because at the time it was the highest unclimbed peak in the world, I think, Batura too. Pretty epic. Now you mentioned Michael Jordan. I read somewhere that you taught yourself how to dunk a basketball in 10th grade. You got cut from the team. This is what I read. You got cut from the team. Now, I know you. That would not sit well with Joby.
No.
So what did you do? You went home and then you basically got better, didn't you?
You know what, Kenton? I never really had any God-given talents that were that great, but I never minded training really hard or working really hard to try to make up the gap of my lack of talent. So, yeah, I did. I got cut when I was in 10th grade. My father played basketball and was really into basketball, so he really wanted me to excel at that. And to be honest, I was not as interested in it as he was. But I took it as a challenge when I got cut. They cut us because there were not enough uniforms for everybody. And if I remember right, I thought, why not buy some more uniforms? That seems like a simple solution. Apparently, it was not. But it was a defining moment in my life because I really did. It was like Michael Jordan. He got cut in 10th grade and he came back and he just practiced and trained to where he got to where he made himself so much better. He was able to do that. Now, at the time, obviously, that was not my motivation. I didn't know that Michael Jordan had been cut at the 10th grade like that, but I did. And so I went home and I thought about, instead of being sad, or, my friends called me and said, oh man, it's too bad and everything. I said, oh, don't worry. I've got a solution. I'll figure it out. Okay. So my solution, after I realized what is the essence of basketball, what does it take to dominate the game from a scoring point of view, a defensive point of view, all the different aspects of the game. And what I realized was the guys who can jump the highest can dominate the game. Now, I'm a small guy. At the time, I was a little bitty guy. I was maybe 5'10", 150 pounds, like light, skinny guy. Couldn't do much. So I went home and I asked my father to buy me a new basketball goal that you could adjust. Went to Walmart, $100, little concrete, boom, it was there. It started at 8.5 feet. So I could just barely dunk the basketball at 8.5 feet, but then I got where I could do all the tricks, 360, in the driveway of my parents' house in my spare time, which I had a lot of since I got cut from the team. And then I would put the basketball goal up 6 inches higher each time until I got to the regulation height of 10 feet, and then I could do all the tricks. And so the next year, when I came back to try out for the basketball team, I could do all this stuff, but nobody knew. It's one of the greatest days of my life. Into the summer, school starts, basketball tryouts, junior varsity team. I'm in the lineup. My friends are there, got some new guys, blah, 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 big guys. And I basically, you got the 2-line layup, warming up, everything. Guy throws me the ball. I go up and I'm just, boom, hanging on the rim, kind of jerking it down. Breakaway rim, like, ugh. And everybody in the gym just stopped what they were doing. Like, stopped. They were like, holy, what the hell did just happen there? And the coach came up to me and he said, what was that? Like, what did you do? They thought I was using the strength shoes or the jump box or the weights or something. I'm like, no, I just figured it out. And ever since then, in those games, I was able to do what I thought I could do, to the point where we won the state championship that I was in high school all 4 years in a row. The senior year that I played, I was a starting 5 forward because I had grown up a little bit, and then I could really jump high. Yeah. I was all state, all regional. I won the slam dunk contest in like 3 places. It was great. These huge black guys couldn't figure out how the hell this little white guy is even in the lineup. And I made a lot of friends that way. And in that way, it was really fun. We had a lot of fun with that. And when I think about that, it seems like a million years ago, but in a lot of ways, it was the driving force that made me realize that if I train hard enough, I can compensate for my lack of ability or lack of gifts that have God-given, physical gifts, to the point where I could achieve my dreams, which really where I wanted to go is where you and I spend all our time, and that's the mountains.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. What you're talking about really resonates with the 10,000 hour rule. If you something in your wheelhouse and you keep practicing 10,000 hours, and you become like world class at it. And I know there's a lot of people who say otherwise. There's got to be an innate talent. But listening to you with your training with Simone, training for the basketball, you're clearly one of these guys that has a deep-seated determination with the ability and the dogged mindset to apply yourself, which is taking you, is elevated you to the level that you've got to. Again, I was reading somewhere about you saying that, and I'll try and put it in my own words. I was reading, and it said somewhere that Joby perhaps isn't an elite alpinist, and maybe he's not at the very elite level of wingsuit flying. But I know you well enough that you bring a confidence that gets you a place at the table, and that confidence comes from the amount of time that clearly you put into things. And I think that's a great learning tool for the generation that's coming through, the generation that is constantly looking for the hack. They're constantly looking for the shortcut. And you are living testimony that hard work pays off. It's really impressive to hear. Yeah, it's super impressive.
Well, you get blessed by the time you put in, like you said, and your own way. You're right. It just goes to show you, though, Kenton, that if you have a vision and you make a plan and you fully commit to that plan, that there really is no limit to what you can achieve. And, for me, the best part of that in seeing what I could do in my life if I trained hard enough is being able to spend the time with the people like you, like Simone Iñaki, Henry Todd, people like that, because what you said is true. I'm not the best mountain climber in the world. I don't say that I am, because I'm not. I'm definitely not. Guys like you or Garrett Madison, people like big shot, rock shot guys. I was never the best wingsuit pilot. I was one of the top 10, maybe I was up there for sure.
Oh,
I was
wow.
a guy who was, but doing, I'll put it this way. I was always lucky I got invited to the table. And I was always appreciative that I got invited, because I probably shouldn't have been there from Louisiana. I had to go a long way.
I'm not
I was
sure
happy to
about
be
that.
at the table with you guys. That's all. Yeah.
See, I'm not sure about that, because you brought the confidence to get a place at the table. And that is the remarkable thing. We're going to segue into something in a second. It's bringing that level of experience and determination. And I mean, where does the confidence come from? I mean, where does the confidence? Because you can walk into the room. I've seen it. You walk into the room, and you can bring the room alive. Your general persona is electrifying, and that comes from your confidence and charisma. And it's curious, because you don't see that very often in the big mountain climbers. Maybe you see it in the wingsuit flying fraternity. That's something we'll talk about in a minute. But you bring this confidence and charisma into mountaineering, even from a young age. You've got all the labels on you. You could strike the deal. You could negotiate. You saw something which others didn't and don't. And that is your confidence. And it's curious where that grew.
Kenton, I would have to say that the way that I applied my business acumen and my idea of making a life and a living out of what I did along the way, which changed, like you said, along the way from climbing to wingsuit, base jump, TV, movie stuff. It's evolved. Thank God. Many opportunities to have, but my father was a really good business guy, and his business was very different. It was more brass tacks type things, hardcore in the South, oil business, building pipelines, drilling oil wells, and doing things that needed to be done. And he was a man who got the job done. I always appreciated that my father taught me how to work hard, but more than that, he said, if you're going to, he gave me a few really good bits of pieces of information along the way, that I think allowed me to be in a position where I felt like I was trying to be the best professional person at what I was doing every time, and to try to get a result for the people I was working for, which probably gave me a little bit of a leg up in some ways. When I would talk to a television company or a sponsor about it, it was always, what can I do for you? How can I, here's all the cool things I'm doing. How can I make it where we can take a product that you're coming up with, or a design or something, and enhance it? What can I do for you? A lot of the guys would come up to me, especially in wingsuiting stuff, and say, man, you're not the best wingsuit guy. How do you do all this stuff? How do you get the MasterCard commercials and stuff? And I would be quick to say, no, you're right. I'm definitely not. You're better than me, probably. But while you guys are having fun over here jumping and racing and drinking beers and all that stuff, chasing girls at the end of the day in Switzerland, I'm in Los Angeles taking meeting after meeting after meeting, being told no most often until somebody says yes. Because they would say, how'd you get $5-10 million to do this project? I said, because I worked on it for 20 years until they said yes. And I rammed it down their throats at the end. And that's kind of how you have to do it. But I always was very fortunate to have good people in my life around me who were good mentors that showed me some things along the way. And that thing that comes from inside was something that probably came from me wanting to, I didn't just want to do it. I wanted to make something out of it. I wanted people, in some ways, when I walked into the lodge, and I had watched a few guys like you walk in when everybody knows them. I said, one of these days I'm going to be that guy that walks in and the owner of the lodge comes out and puts a scarf around my neck. That was 1999. A few years later, well, more than a few, then you start to know some people and start to do some things and make some business. And it's a blessing. It's a blessing. And it's a blessing. The biggest blessing to me was the fact that I was able to make it work to come back to places like Nepal and spend time with my people there and people like you, to be honest, really. It's a simple life for me,
I mean,
more than you realize.
when I first set foot on Everest, 2004, people were already talking about Joby in sort of semi-hushed tones. So I think you've already elevated yourself up to a level. Now, so I think it was 2008. I remember seeing you, I think it was 2008. I remember seeing you, we were all quite drunk in the Roadhouse Cafe in Kathmandu. And, well, we can probably laugh about it now, but it was just after Iñaki, it was just after Iñaki had died on Annapurna. And I know that Iñaki played a big role in your life. And it was a sad, sad day. You were kind of sitting, I can visualize it now, where you were sitting.
I remember it too.
And yeah, Iñaki was his larger-than-life character in the climbing fraternity, especially at 8,000 meters, one that lived and breathed the community, and he was ripped away from us on Annapurna. And you kind of moved out of climbing a bit then. And you moved into what people would consider an even more dangerous sport of base jumping and wingsuit flying. Now, just talk to me a little bit about why that move took place. You know, having just lost a very dear friend, you move into what a lot of people would say is the most reckless, dangerous sport out there. I know it's not. I know it is dangerous, don't get me wrong. And I think, you know, you will have some things to say about this. But I'm really curious about what the catalyst was for that shift.
You know, that's one of the best questions anybody's ever asked me, but it's only because you know me in that arena that you would be able to ask me that question, because you were there and kind of saw it go down. It's true. Iñaki was my main guy. The thing is, when I look back in the past and I think about the greatest days of my life, besides, you know, days I've had with my little boy, but in my life, in my adventures, he was the man, like larger than life. Like Simone is maybe you say he's kind of the, you know, the greatest kind and everything. But the three of us were friends and we joked a lot and had great expeditions. But there was something about Iñaki that was just special. I passed you up coming down. I remember that day and got to Camp 4. And my father said, I called my dad. I said, "Hey, I'm good. I'm all right. I'm on my way down." And he said, "Buddy, I'm sorry to tell you." He said, "I figure I should tell you before somebody else does." Iñaki died on Annapurna. And I think I was so delirious and screwed up from what was happening because I ran out of oxygen up at the top. I'm pretty sure I remember asking you if you got any extra bottles, and you were like, "No." I was like, "Yeah, never mind. I'm just going to keep going down. It's fine. I'll make it." And I wasn't sure if I was delirious or not. But then when I got to base camp, Henry crawled in the tent with me and said, "I got to tell you something."
Yeah. And
then the finality of that happened. And I think that really was the catalyst of me saying, I think at the time I wasn't, there was a time, and I'm sure you understand this, Kenton, where you have a list of things that you want to do and you have them in your mind and these dream climbs that you want to do. And at the point when Iñaki died, my list had already been ticked off for the most part. The things I really wanted to try or do, I had done most of it. And so I thought, I'm going to figure out a way to experience the mountains in a different way with a different group of people. And I was incredibly blessed and lucky in that transition was very quick because I had started making TV shows for National Geographic, and it facilitated me being able to learn how to base jump very quickly. In just like a few weeks, I was already in and surrounded by the best guys in the world, you know, from the show. And I thought, man, this is it. This is what I want to do. Everything was different. Everything moved faster. When I found the wingsuits, it was, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, slow going in the mountains until I found that, you know, I could charter a helicopter in Switzerland and fly around the Matterhorn. Well, That's pretty fast. I'm going 140 miles an hour. Boom. So that was kind of how it worked. I saw a guy that had a wingsuit on the first movie I made. And I said, where did you get that? And he said, why don't you come back next summer and I'll show you. And I did. And I kept going back to Switzerland for like 5 or 6 months out of the year, every year for about 14 years until I was the master of the wingsuit. I was the master of base jumping. And of course, I was always able to go back to Los Angeles. And what I did basically, Kenton, was I figured out, people said, how'd you make money from that? When everybody was trying to get a GoPro sponsorship, I was making a TV show that was sponsored by GoPro for $1 million. Like that was how my mind worked in a different way. I'm like, nah, we're thinking bigger. And in fact, what I did was I had sponsorship from a few companies like Oakley. And I said, I'm going to spend all that money on helicopter time until I figure out how to choreograph the flights to where the guys are flying with me and we capture it. And then I can take that footage back to LA. And when I did, the people were like, well, that's not real. I'm like, no. Not only is it not fake, that's me. That's me flying like a foot away from the mountain. So that's how it worked. I was able to showcase that. And then I was able to get the jobs from documentaries to Hollywood stunt work stuff to the real technical filming things. And like you, I enjoy the technical things and making things happen and people's dreams happen and making things that everybody says impossible. It's like, we can sort that out. You know what I'm saying?
It's just incredible. I remember somebody sent me a link. This is like years ago, and maybe it was Henry or I don't know who it was. Sent me a link and said, "Check this out." And it was a trailer to your film, not your film, a trailer to your series. Was it Adventure Maker, or something? And then
yeah.
I remember watching this thinking, "Oh my God, this is so Hollywood." It's like, and one man's mission to change the way we look, and but then when you actually dived into it, it left me open mouthed. There you are. The premise of the series was, this is 2007, so this is just before the whole Everest thing. You were riding rodeo bulls, you were racing NASCAR, so each episode was you taking on a different challenge, essentially, wasn't it?
Correct, yeah. Every time was a different thing I had never done before.
And it was, if you got past the opening sequence, which was a bit, for a Brit, it was a little bit vomit-inducing. But when you got through that, it was a very raw, honest, emotionally charged sometimes, portrayal of something that every boy and girl these days would want to do who's in adventure. It was beyond epic. And that, to me, seemed to throw you beyond the level that I'd seen anybody go before. Would that be about right for the time scale of things taking off?
Yeah, I would say that. And again, a lot of things are about timing, and that timing really was perfect for me because at the time, there were certain shows on TV that I would say I was in competition with, somebody like Bear Grylls or somebody who was like demonstrating something. And I remember telling the crew and my director, like, I want to make sure that this is all legit, that we are doing things where we're not just saying, here's what would happen if I was in the race or how I would do it. I want to be in the bloody race with 18 other guys, figuring it out. And in fact, we did that. And I can say that in every movie I made, whatever, couple dozen documentaries, those were some of the best ones for sure. But, you know, if you look at it, I always had a helmet on. I could always die. I was actually out there doing it. But it did give me the ability to understand one thing, which was if I could train with the right guys, if I had the right resources, there really was not a lot that I couldn't figure out. And not that I'm some exceptional person. It's just that there was a formula there for me to look at things now, where as crazy and as big and complicated as it is, and it seems to everybody, including myself, if you break it down into these actual smaller steps, and you train for those steps and you build a system and you put that system together and you have a good, solid, cohesive team of people that understand what the end result needs to be and has to be, then there's really not much you can't do. Like landing on the moon, man. I mean, it seems impossible, but you know, it's like getting to the top of Everest seems impossible. But if you've got a team of people that are determined and smart, you can figure it out. Just like jumping off the summit. There's always a little luck involved and good timing, but you know, like I said, I was really lucky to make that transition over to that thing because I'm good at little technical things. I'm not really good at much, but those technical things paid off for me.
Yeah, I think you're being a bit humble by saying that you're not particularly good at lots of it. I think you're pretty damn good, Joby. I mean, but it's fascinating that, you know, I read a lot about, you know, how to sort of elevate your own performance and, you know, how to be a better version of yourself, etc., and etc. And a lot of people talk about the circle of competence, and you find your circle of competence and you hone in on that and you stick within that to a certain extent and you get really, really, really good at that. And when you step outside of that circle of competence, well, you're kind of on somewhat rocky ground. You seem to have excelled in the arena of mountaineering, and I don't think many people can take that away from you. New Route on Makalu, for instance, I mean, that alone puts you right up there. It really does. But then you pick that up, completely move over here, put it down again, and if we just for now ignore the rodeo riding, the NASCAR racing, the extreme kayaking that you were doing, and just focus on the wingsuit flying, then you started to excel in a completely different circle of competence. And I think I probably did you a disservice saying that you weren't, you know, world class. If you're in the top 10, you're world class and then some. And again, it seems to be all those years of you spending time in Lauterbrunnen, putting every last drop into learning your craft again. And I mean, it's such a powerful story for so many people out there. It's time, it's effort putting into something to excel within that circle. You set yourself a goal and then you went away because you just disappeared. I mean, we kept going back to Everest. And it's like, oh, remember that guy Joby? I go, oh, yeah, I did. I've not really seen him since, like, he came to Everest in 2008. And then I kind of heard on the grapevine, you were just jumping. And then all of a sudden, I think it was Henry sent me a link. And it was you, like, hurtling past the Matterhorn at 200 miles an hour. I was like, what's this? And then we hooked up for supper in Lauterbrunnen. And you told me everything you were doing. And it only now it resonates. You were putting the groundwork in for the next episode of your life. It's like all of a sudden I've just had this moment of clarity on what you were doing. It's genius.
Well, I appreciate that, and you're totally right. That's exactly what I was doing. I went a little bit underground with some guys that really were the best in the world. I took advantage of having that time with these guys in Switzerland to really, truly show me the essence of base jumping, what human flight and wingsuiting truly meant, and what the capacity for that sport really was. Because I can't say I was the greatest wingsuit pilot in the world, but I'd say top 10, I'll put it this way. I got invited to every single sporting event from China to South Africa. I made more money and made more projects than anybody else. So I had a capacity to do it. But what I really felt confident about was the idea that this was going to have a lifespan, and I wanted to get in on the lifespan of what it was. I wanted to take advantage. These fringe extreme sports don't last forever. It's not like mountaineering where you can always say there's a history of it. It's been there. These kind of wingsuiting things, I knew that it would have a span of life that would be a few years where all the work and the things would be done for the most part. And then it would, be a little bit saturated. But you're right. I totally went underground because I was going to Himalayas every year.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like you said, where's Joby? He didn't show up. People are asking Ishwari, what happened to Joby? He's like, oh, he's working on something else. But the whole idea was to bring it back to the Himalayas, like you said. And so I had to perfect my techniques, the filming things, the choreography. I had to raise millions of dollars to be able to bring it back to that big arena, which we did, of course, in 2014. And I haven't told you about this yet, but my deal now looks like it's going to be even bigger. We can talk about that however and whenever you want to, but like next season is going to be big.
Well, I mean, to hear you say it's going to be big, so let's just take a step back a little bit. When I saw you in Lauterbrunnen, if listeners, viewers don't know, Lauterbrunnen is one of the prettiest, most beautiful valleys in the world. It's steep limestone cliffs in the shadow of the Eiger in Switzerland, and it's the most popular base jumping spot in mainland Europe. I'm right in saying that, aren't I?
Right, it is.
Got loads of exit spots. Go there on your summer holidays, and there are people literally jumping off left, right, and centre. You see chutes opening all over the place. It's high energy. It's lovely. So yeah, go visit. Go visit Switzerland. But you were in this tiny weeny lodge. It was really cheap and cheerful. I mean, it's beautiful, but cheap and cheerful. You were saving your pennies. There's a common thread here. We got drunk, I think, because I had to go back to work with a hangover the next day. I think we got drunk. And you kind of, you didn't spill the beans, but you alluded to what you were trying to do. And then 2014, you went to Everest with the concept of, and I never quite understood this, was it jumping off the top? You were going to jump off with a paraglider and then release and fly down the southwest face of Everest and down the Coombe to land. Was it Camp 1 or Base Camp, something like that? It was
Camp 1, yeah.
It was fairly epic in its concept, and execution was big. I'm right in saying that. And then for those who don't know, 2014 was the first of the 2 years where there's no summits, huge icefall collapse, which really it had a profound effect on you, did it not?
Yeah, I don't ever feel sorry for myself in that position because you just shouldn't. But you know how it is, Kenton. You came a little bit later than me to the Himalayas, but not much. It's like you start going there, you start making friends, and then you start making family in those parts of the world that you go every year and you work and you do things and you bring business and you make business, and it's all good, positive things and in a lot of ways. But, nobody could have ever expected what happened that time. And I just, I guess everything happens for a reason, but that was a tough time, of course, in my life, but it was a lot tougher time in a lot of other people's lives. I went home and sat on the beach in California and cried, but I was on the beach in California. So there's that. I never felt sorry for myself. People say, oh man, you lost that big project and everything. I'm like, I didn't lose anything because I didn't lose my life. And my team all got it. And that's a tough deal. But you know what? Everybody that is involved in the stuff that we do understands the situation. That doesn't really make it any easier when things don't work out right or go wrong. But, I was supposed to be up there that day with my guys as usual. That was a weird thing. I don't know if I ever told you, but a producer asked me to stay behind and film one thing with Garrett. That's the only reason I wasn't up there. So there's that. I hope I'm here for a higher purpose that I haven't realized yet.
You certainly enrich a lot of people's lives. So
you're kind to say that, my friend. You're kind to say that. I appreciate that. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but I bring good energy as when I can, and I bring jobs and resources when I can to fulfill not just my dream, but all the people around me and enjoy the life. There's nothing better than being in the mountains with your friends. I've realized that for a long time, as I know you have. And then we're really the lucky ones.
Yeah, no, for sure. And listen, we're not going to dwell on it, but for those who don't understand, 2014, there was a massive collapse of a Sirac above the higher part of the Kumbu ice fall, and it came down and it obliterated essentially the route up to Camp 1, Camp 2, the higher reaches of the mountain. And I think, was it 6 of your team were up there that day? And
8.
8
total.
Yeah.
8 total. My 3 guys, my main guys that were with me, they all got it. And then we had, of course, NBC and the other team members. Yeah. So a total of 8 out of the 16.
Total sort of 16 deaths. And it was a really bad time for Nepal, and unfortunately, it didn't really get that much better. But the following year, but being the person that you are, and I'm not being flippant about things, but you're one of these people that has this ability to learn and to bounce back, and as Churchill famously said, success is the ability to bounce from sort of one tragedy or one failure to another without lack of enthusiasm. And your projects just seem to get bigger and bigger and bigger each time. You're never put down, are you? That enthusiasm bounces back relatively quickly, because you are a man that's had tragedy, peppered throughout your life, like a lot of us have. And you were meant to be on Everest this year, because we were pretty much going to share a base camp. We were talking together.
We were.
We were talking about sharing
you
film.
Go over there eating my waffles, man.
And I was. And again, the project's got even bigger again, has it not? So this year, as I think everybody knows, COVID put the kibosh on everything. I remember pinging some messages going back and forth, and you're like, well, what do you think is going to happen, Joby? And I'm like, I don't know, man, I don't know. I've got all this infrastructure and money. And like you say, it's hard on us not fulfilling our perhaps obligations to our clients and our sponsors, but it's even harder on the Nepalese. I mean, I was chatting to some of the team only this morning, and they were saying, hey, Kenton, we're finding it really hard. What are your plans for the autumn? You're coming back? Is there work? I said, hey, I don't know what the ministry is doing. So, I mean, you had a big project this year. It was... I didn't quite understand what it was, so perhaps you can just take a few minutes, if you've got time, just explain what the project was, because it just gets bigger each time.
You know me, Kenton, that's how I roll. If I can't do it, I'll make it bigger the next time. Well, sort of. Here's the deal. You're right. After 2014, I wouldn't say that I gave up at all about the project that I wanted to do on Everest, but I felt that I had to let it sit there and either go away or to manifest itself into something different. And I'm a patient man, as we on expeditions have to be. And I dove into some other projects, other things unrelated, in fact, investments and doing other things, trying to occupy my time, because there was a dead zone there in the Himalayas where we just really couldn't do very much for a couple of years in a row. And you sort of try to reestablish what's going on, over in this part of the world, because it is the far side of the world. And for me, what I like is when a team comes together, when everything is just right. Things that are as complicated as, say, jumping off Mount Everest, you got to get up there is a big deal. Jumping off, a whole nother deal. Landing safe, another deal. Getting off the mountain, another deal. Getting out of there with all your team coming off the mountain, yet another deal. All these layers there. After that first time, I really was not sure that I really wanted to risk my life or the lives of anybody else for my dream or my idea. It had to fall into place. It had to be natural and organic. It had to just work. Well, I ran it past a few people. When I found myself alone at my house, sometimes life changes more than you think. I had a wife and a son, and all of a sudden I found myself alone, and in a position where I could look at things a bit of a different way. And so I went back to some of my Hollywood guys and said, what would you think if we went back to Mount Everest and did it like this? And I had a lot of people saying yes to everything. It's a great story for a lot of different reasons. It's the ultimate comeback story. And I like telling that because I like to motivate and inspire people when I can, in the little ways, the tiny, tiny little ways that I can. That's a good thing for me. And so I have a really great network of people here in California to work from. As far as resources, the Hollywood part of it is certainly there, where you want people to be able to see what you made. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the process as well. And so what I did was I went back to the biggest people I could and said, I want to do the biggest thing in the world again. And I want to tell this story. I want to tell it in a very different way, a very humble way, in a very inspiring way. And so we're making our roads towards that. What I found just in the last 72 hours, Kenton, is that what people believe in this project, they believe it's not about me. It's bigger than me, bigger than Joby. But the Joby guy tells the story because he's just a little guy from Shreveport, Louisiana, that came from jack shit to go and do these things. And I think that's inspiring. If I can make it inspiring, people, think a certain way, then that's good. But most people can't relate to going to these places that we go, my friend. And so we have to bring it to them. And I like being able to do that. And so that's what I've done is in the last few weeks and months. And as I work out my plans for the next few months until we get to be at that base camp together next door, don't snore too loud, my friend. Come over and knock on your tent. No, and I want you involved in this too, because I think it's quite poignant, and you're very much a part of the story, and I love that. This time we're going to do it.
Well, that's the Joby spirit coming out. You can't keep a good man down. You really can't. So we've got to bring this home at some stage. I could talk to you all night long, but
I know I could talk to you too. I just miss you, bro.
You're too kind. But
this is the beer.
We should be drinking beer. I've just got coffee. There's a couple of things I need to know. Now, I've always been tempted, but never base jumped. What goes through your mind? I know you've done hundreds of jumps. You jumped out of a helicopter over Everest once, did you not? And then landed at 17,000 feet.
Yeah.
What goes through your mind? Because obviously complacency can't seep in. You're stood on the edge. You've got your chute on your back. You've got, 1,000 feet, 3,000 feet, whatever. What goes through your mind to make you take that step?
Everybody probably thinks that a guy like me who's taken that step just must not have any fear of that. It's actually the opposite. I have a fear of heights, probably more than most people. It's a weird thing, right, for a mountain climber?
Yep.
But I'm sure you can relate to that too. You overcome those fears. It's not that you're not scared of falling off the mountain, right? You're scared of falling off the mountain just the same as I am. You just make sure you don't. Like Simone looked at me one time in Pakistan and says, "We don't fall here." Okay. He's like, But to step off something is a voluntary thing. So for me, for example, you can imagine, Kenton, that for 20 years, all I did was practice and train to hang on and not fall off the mountain. Now I'm turning it completely the opposite. And I'm saying I'm walking up next to the cliff and I'm going to jump off. As far as your mind and your attitude, your soul, your heart, your training attitude and method, it is 1,000% the opposite of what you just did for half your life. You're saying, man, I'm training all this time, not fall off. Now I'm walking up to the edge and I'm going to jump off voluntarily. And I'm going to save my own life with this parachute. Then you involve wingsuits, super action, amazing futuristic technology. where you can jump off and fly away and fly for a long time, minutes and minutes before you even pull the parachute. And then what you do with that technology is kind of up to you. Your perception, your ability to envision, and your creativity then is up to that. That's where it's like, I'm the only guy, the only guy to ever fly around the Matterhorn. One day I got up and I said, hey, to my buddies, hey, let's go fly around the Matterhorn. I'll pay for everything. And we went over to Zermatt, got over there to Air Zermatt, and got in the helicopter. And for $900, we flew around the Matterhorn. And we went home to Lauterbrunnen that day and drank beer. Adventure happens usually at the least moment you're thinking about it. Sometimes, as you well know, you go, hey, let's go for it tonight, or let's do this, or hey, we're on K2, let's go over to Broad Peak and let's hit that, see if that works. So, you understand more than most people how that works. That's how it worked for me with the wingsuiting thing. At the end, bro, I had nothing to lose. And so I went for it.
Wow. Joby, I don't quite know how to follow that up. You ended the show brilliantly for us just on that. And I said earlier, I think I did you a disservice when I said that perhaps, maybe you're not an elite alpinist, maybe you're not an elite.
No, you told the truth, dude, that you're right.
Well, no,
totally right.
You say that, but you're alive still. And I was doing some research into base jumping, and I've got it written down here somewhere. There was, 14 of the top wingsuiters came together in 2013 in China, and 4 of them were dead within 18 months or so. Now, you were at that table, and you're still with us. And it was the late, great Alex Lowe, with reference to the climbing, who's the best climber in the world today? And he said, the one that's having the most fun. I've seen you on the mountain, and everything you do is focused on fun. So going on those two premises of having fun and still being alive, that makes you the very best out there. So I doff my cap to you, sir. I really do. You're quite, you're quite the man.
I appreciate it. You're very kind, and I think in some ways you're right. The guys who, in any case, I don't know about me, but I know that the guy in the wilderness, in the mountains, base jumping, kayaking, whatever the guy's doing, women, men, the people that are having the most fun are the people who are winning the most.
That's true. Joby, thank you, my friend. It's been a while.
Pleasure.
A couple of years ago, we were sharing a beer.
Pleasure.
Let's share a beer soon, my friend. You be safe over there in California. I think lockdown must be devastatingly hard for you with a beach outside your back door. But, we're all suffering hardships one way or another. Do be in contact, fella. Let's talk about it next year. Be safe. Look after that son of yours. I know that he's very close to your heart. So be a fantastic father figure, and we'll see you very, very soon. Joby, thank you.
Love you, bro. Take care.
Brilliant.
See you soon.
Yeah, I'll give you a call.
Thank you.
Peace. So, wow, Joby Ogwyn. I don't quite know where to bring that together. What an amazing career. The ability to segue from one to the other so seamlessly and to excel. So many things in there. There's no shortcuts in life, are there, to being really, really world-class? Because I think he is world-class. So we mentioned right at the start about our friends at FatMap. FatMap have done us an amazing competition. All you need to do is like this episode of Cool Conversations on my Facebook page and share it. Share it and tag a couple of your friends in, and you have the fantastic opportunity of winning a whole year's subscription. 1 whole year subscription to the amazing mapping app of FatMap. It's 3D handheld mapping, fantastic for mountain biking, hiking, skiing, off-piste skiing. If you've never seen it, check it out. just go to the App Store or wherever you get your downloads from and just search for FatMap. It's an incredible piece of software. And those guys, we've teamed up, we're giving away a 1-year subscription. Like this episode on my Facebook page, share it and tag a couple of mates in. That's all you're gonna do, and we'll pick a winner next week. And on next week, we'll be same place, same time, right here. So we see you then. Thanks, and I hope you digged it.